I put a quick coat on my areas for the feathers on his body. So we've got his tail here. I've double loaded my 3/8, which is like a number 10. And I'm going to start with my brush up on the chisel, milk chocolate down, and light mocha upwards. And we're going to pull in these feathers. Now they are going to end up having another coat on top. Work my way down. And for the bottom, I will go back, like I say, for another coat. I want to make sure that I'm coming right off the edge when I'm doing the tips to the feathers. I'll continue all the way up that side, and then just to show you, I'm going to come back, add another coat, another layer of feathers, not a coat, another layer. So you can see what's going to happen on our feathers that we put on the second coat on top. Now these feathers are going to end up with little veins in them, and so they're going to get a little more done to them. But right now, this is the baseline for our feathers. So I will go back here and repeat back over these, starting at the bottom, work my feathers upwards. And I'll bring that whole line in there, repeating. And I'm making sure that the feather comes up. You'll see that it's coming up right into where his little trim on his jacket's going to go afterwards. So I just want the feathers to end naturally, not stop, not to getting them on there. We're going to be painting that part on top after, so it's all right. So again, I'll complete doing on this side. And I didn't do those, a first coat on those ones. All right. So I'm going to work my way and then I'm going to feather my way up into there. And we're going to be using burnt umber as well, so that when we get up to the top, it's going to be, I'm just going to load milk chocolate and burnt umber to work the feathers coming up. Dirty brush, so there's still a little of that light on there. Now as I load this time, it's going to be kind of more of the burnt umber showing. Okay, so finish with these ones back, giving that highlight as they work their way up. There. So that's his bushy row of feathers. I've applied a coat of milk chocolate to the wings. And I'm going to start at the tip of the wings, same way we did before with the double load milk chocolate and light mocha. And we'll just work our way up our wings, reloading as needed. And I'll just continue. Once I get about a little more than halfway up, I'm going to switch and go to the milk chocolate and the burnt umber like we did before. For the top of the wings. And I will come back with a little more of the light mocha on the tip of the dirty brush and just give a little bit of a highlight to the end of the feathers. Now remember, we're going to be adding the little lines and doing the rest to these feathers as we did, the little feather veins, and then floating the highlight on the tips of them. So we'll do that to both arms. What we're going to do is take our 1/4 inch shader, load it in warm white, and just with our brush chisel the background. And I'm just chiseling warm white through my feet to create the snow underneath the chicken's feet. Brewster. Rooster's feet. Here we go. There we go. We just want it to end uneven at the edges. Nice and jagged. All right. I'm going to take, I've put a wet coat of the light mocha for his beard, and I'm double loading again with the milk chocolate and the light mocha. Now it'll end up coming out lighter than we did in the bottom because the base coat underneath is, of course, light mocha. So I will work my way up the beard the very same way we did before. Of course, they are just feathers, but we're calling them the beard because he's the Christmas guy. And we will repeat with a complete another layer on top before we add the feathery marks like before. Now, once I've got my beard in there, I'm going to come in for the top of his head, go right around the eyes, going over those glasses. I think I'm going to change them anyways, and put in a base coat of the milk chocolate. I'm using my 1/8 lunar blender right around those eyeballs. And I'm just going to feather this off into the beard. I'm going to give my brush a wipe. And I'm going to pick up burnt umber. And I'm just going to scratch that down into this. So it's going to have that little scratchy, feathery look. It's going to fade off into it. Same thing over on this side. Burnt umber. Now, of course, this milk chocolate's still wet. And I'll just back and forth. I'm going to take a smidge of milk chocolate. Pardon me, light mocha. And just feather with my brush, scratching back and forth the edge of the face. Okay, so we just fade those up into each other. Alrighty, we're going to shade all down the side of both of our stockings, and we're going to shade along both sides of our candy cane with slate gray. Flip my brush. We'll dry that, then we'll come back and we'll shade in the creases. So I've dried it, and now I'm going to come back and I'm going to shade in along the top of the ankle where my stocking is bunched. And I'll just, it doesn't really matter if it's exactly where I have the lines. We just want to give a rippled up effect to it. So once I've done that, then I'm going to take number 1 liner, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to add my stripes. And I want them to be fatter than our stripes we're going to put on our candy cane. We're going to do the same thing with our candy cane. There, fix that edge up. And I will add stripes along the stocking. And we want them to curve and look like they're bunched in as well. You don't want them to be perfectly straight. So I'll give them a little bit of a twist here and there, and that's going to add to our bunched up look. And again, then we will, once our candy cane is striped, or pardon me, shaded, we will go back and stripe our candy cane with the crimson red as well. This crimson red is their new red in their new colors, and it's just a beautiful red. For his beard feathers, we're going to do the same as we did for the others. I'm just switching up to a bigger lunar blender for the first part. So it could be a 1/2 inch or a 3/8. It's not going to matter, whichever you choose. And we will work our way up in rows. Reloading as you need. Now I'll have to touch up at the bottom with the feathers again as we add different parts to his outfit, his fur, his shading, all kinds of things. And make sure that you're ending coming inwards along the outer edges. Curve your feathers inwards. So it's the light mocha and the milk chocolate. And you're going to get some along the beak and the wattle. So I will continue and work my way up. And once I get to the top, now again, I can switch to the smaller brush. I can get away with my 3/8 or my 1/2 inch when I'm doing these feathers. Even smaller, just don't press as hard. So you're using less pressure, you'll get smaller little feathers. So I'll work my way upwards. I know I'm going to have to recoat my beak and my wattle. So I work my feathers upwards, and then I'm going to switch at this point to my 1/4 inch, and I'm going to just kind of put a little wet coat of the milk chocolate. It's better to have the eyes base coated at this point, but I didn't do it. And I wipe the brush. I'm going to pick up burnt umber and start from the top, and I want to chisel brown. Wipe burnt umber downwards into that milk chocolate, fading off into those little feathers. And I'll wipe my brush, and now I'm going to reload in the, and I'll just streak those last feathers up into that wet paint so that they're going to become darker, and just wisp my way up. That's, he's got that funky kind of feathery look, but it's going to turn dark. And if you have your eyes base coated at this point, of course, you'll be touching them up. Just wisping. That's it. We want it to be darker at the top, and that's good. We'll dry and we'll recoat all the other things. We're going to shade our holly coming up the middle with dark Hauser green. So that's going to create our center vein. Once we've done that, I'll dry, and I'm going to float up the opposite side. So paint towards the center, water out both times. Now I'm going to take celery shoot and I'm going to float celery shoot along the outer tips of the holly. Nice and soft. And then I'm going to take my liner, nice and fine liner, and we will thin the veins, thin the celery shoot, pardon me, to create our veins. So this would be to come from the tip inwards. Nice and fine, the strongest being at the tip. Then they'll fade inwards. And you see I'm giving them a curve, right? I will take the celery shoot and just kind of loosely outline from the tip back a bit. It's not to be complete outline, so when I say loosely outline, you see I just pull a bit and drop. So it's just a little outline. The tips we like to have a nice point on. So if we come out from the tip, really pops up our highlight. Now I've got little feathers to add on my wings, so they may come over top of these after, whatever. We just don't want it to look like we outlined. And if you'd like, you can take celery shoot and you can add a little line of highlight in the middle of the green on the stripes of the candy cane while you've got it out. Just in the middle. You can do the same thing with the fiery red in the middle of the red on the candy cane as well as on the stocking. So just come in, just add a little swipe with your liner just in the middle. It's going to enhance the curves. And then the same thing in our stockings. This gives us the highlight. What this does is it's going to help round our stockings. It's very bold right now, but this does die down. So when you first look at it and you think, oh, that's way too bright, it's not going to be. It is going to die down, and you don't see anywhere near as much as you thought you had. We don't use too much of that, so a lot of times what I do is, rather than squirt it out on my palette, I'll just shake it, open my lid, and use my lid as a palette and dip my liner into there. That way, like I say, you're not wasting all that highlight color that you have. So all right, so now we're going to rebase and touch up all of our beak and our wattle and eyes and all of that. I'm going to take my 1/8 Deerfoot and I'm going to pick up neutral gray and just tap in along the outer edge of the fur trim on his jacket. So I'll do that on both outer edges and up where it's going to come from under his beard, so to say. So I just tap a little of that neutral gray coming down, and whatever width I tap, that's going to determine the width of our... Now I wipe my brush off. Brush is always dry. I'm going to tap in white and tap my way up into that gray. So we're not leaving it that strong gray. I'll wipe the brush again on my toweling, pick up white, come from lower and up into that gray, giving us that little bit of gray. And again, we talked about before how we'll have to touch up his feathers on the beard. And all right, and I'm going to do the same thing over at the ends. I should have gone for them first so they'd still be wet. So I might have to pick up a little of the gray on the tip of the brush and tap my way back. So it's with the dirty brush and the gray and the white that we bring out the trim on his coat. I will come back with pure white afterwards and just tap a little bit to highlight. See right there, as I'm coming up, you can see a little of that white is now highlighting over top of the gray. I'm not pressing hard, just lightly. Okay, back into this one because it's dried. I'm putting a little of the gray. Like I say, I should have gone to those sections first. And you can just do the bottom first and work your way up and then go to the top. As long as you don't wet your Deerfoot brush, you got to leave it dry. So I tap my way through there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do, whoops, I've stuck my board right into my palette over here. I'm going to be doing the ball on his hat, like so. Darker on that side, wipe my brush, pick up the white, come over onto this side and loosely tap into the dark. So we get a little of that dark shadow underneath. And again, later on, I'll come back and tap in some white when it's dry. Wipe my brush. Now the brush is getting quite grungy, so it's not the same wiping it. I'll come along. I try to keep this bit of the brim so it looks like it's under the hat here. I may have to come back with my shading. Then I'll put a little over here, not as much. Wipe my brush, pick up the white, come from the middle, up into these creases, tap my way, and again, where my wattle is sticking up over the hat, I'll have to touch up my base coating. I hop all over the place when I'm doing these videos, so hopefully you don't have to work too hard to find the notes that coincide with them. Back and forth into this gray. I might pick up a little bit more gray and tap in here. Wipe the brush. I don't want too much. Pick up the white. We want that to be fuzzy and furry, and that's why we're using the smaller Deerfoot. We're able to control a little bit easier. And I still pounce on the palette quite hard on my piece, nice and soft. I'm going to put a little bit of gray in around our wattle as well. And remember, we're going to come back. So you see how I've left it a little fuzzy off the edge. I'm not wanting that to be fuzzy. I have options here. I can take my Fix-It brush and I can clean that off of my hat brim. So not having that on there puts the fur collar underneath, if that makes sense. So I don't have the fuzzies on that piece that hangs over. That works to put the hat brim underneath. So I can take some of the white now and tap a little bit of highlight. And I could wait for this because it's not quite dry, but I'm such an impatient person. I know I'll come back after and tap a little bit more. I don't want to come too far with my white over here because we do want that gray to round our brim back. Same thing down now on the rest of his jacket. That's dry well. I'm able to pounce it out and just come back in with some nice soft fuzzy. So you see how that lifts up that fur and it really makes it look like it's standing up. So we've got some dimension in here. Nice and soft. And we just tap that. I don't want it too bright up near the top. I'm going to do a little shading on that after anyway. So there's our nice brim on his coat. And what I am seeing is that I've lost a lot of the white. So since I've got white out here, I can come back in with some white in my liner on my candy cane. Do you see? I'll just bring a little bit more of that white. I may have to come back a second coat on top of these if I'm seeing all the red through, but that makes a difference to me. Actually, it's cleaning up the wiggly edge to my stripes as well. I'm a get her in, get her done kind of person, so I know people who, I'm seeing a little right here too. I'll put some white along the edge of his stocking. There. Just cleaning up these edges. Now I made a dirty fuzzy edge here. But just cleaning up these edges pulls your eye in those directions. Now we're going to get ready to do our beak and feet. We're going to shade the beak and wattle and feet. So the wattle is going to, and we're doing the wattle with raw umber. So we'll come down, and I should have done this part first. And he's got two kind of balls at the bottom on this. They're going to tuck out under his glasses when we get his glasses on. Now I'm going to shade under his beak and down the bottom side of the wattle. And on this side I'll do the opposite and come back up. Now we're going to be shading everything with raw umber and a little blending gel at the end. So you're not concerned if you get a little off the edge. I'm going to come up on this side, and this one has a there we go. So there's his wattle. We'll be adding a highlight later on. And now we're going to go to the beak, and the beak we're going to shade with milk chocolate. So we want to come along the top of his beak, under our wattle, and back down this side. So it's up, under, and back down. And that's with milk chocolate. Now, whoops, milk chocolate, I say as I pick up raw umber. Okay, so we want to create an opening in his beak. So we will do that by floating paint up, water down, just up a little bit. Now I'm going to come back with my liner and add a little honey brown back along the edge. There we go. There, that's given him that opening. And again, like I said, we're going to come back with raw umber, so everything's going to get strengthened. We'll go down to her. It's a her now all of a sudden. We'll go down to his feet, and we're going to shade down there. And we want a little smaller brush. And we're, again, it's milk chocolate. And both feet will be shaded the same all the way along the outer edge. I'll come back to this one after it's dried. Same thing with the top on there. So while I'm waiting for those to dry, I can come and do one side all the way down there. And this one, same thing. So I should be able to come back on the other one. We are putting snow streaked onto his feet, so again, you don't need to spend a lot of time in here. It's not a panic if you go out of your edges a bit. And of course, we always have our fix-it brush, so that Princeton fix-it brush has become a staple in our classes. It does an amazing, amazing job. There we go. So we now have the feet done, the beak done, and I'm going to make a highlight by mixing my honey brown. Whoops. I'm going to take some honey brown and light mocha. And I'll just mix those together. Now let's come back up to the beak because that's had some time to dry. And I'm going to float my highlight along the beak, much like our holly, out to the points. So I'll let that dry, or I will dry it. Clean my brush out, good. And I'm going to take my 1/8 lunar blender. Okay, I'll give it a bit of a dry first. I'm back, he is dry. So I'm going to take my color that I mixed and dry brush with the 1/8 lunar blender. So I'll come up the middle of his beak and off a bit. Give him a little highlight. Reload. Nicely scratch a little highlight here. I will come back with my liner and add a brighter. I'll move it down to his feet. And we're going to dry brush down the middle of his feet. Load again, scuff it off. And then I'm going to take burnt umber with my liner once I find it. So I've got my burnt umber and milk chocolate. I'm going to pick the both of them up, just kind of brush mix with my liner. And we're going to add rings. Milk chocolate just needs to be strengthened a bit for this. So these are the little rings. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to take my highlight color and just streak with my liner up the middle of our dry brushed highlight first. That's where I said I wanted to come back with my liner and strengthen the edges on our beak. And with our burnt umber milk chocolate brush mix and our liner, I'm going to come in and strengthen inside the mouth there. So now I'm back to the rings on his feet. I will put these rings back over top of that highlight. There. So we've given him the rings on his toes. I'm going to bring snow up around them. And it's time for his eyes again. Well, not again. His eyes are base coated. And they're base coated in the Williamsburg blue. So I'm still going to use my 1/8 lunar blender on his eyes now. I'm going to pick up a little Williamsburg and some white. And I'm going to scratch that highlight along the edge. Now pick up more white. So it's still with the blue. Just pat that a bit. I didn't scuff it off enough. There, it's more scratchy. I want that scratchy look in there. And I'm cleaning my brush off because I'm going for white, no blue, just white. Scuff it off on my towel. It's a bit better over there. My towel's dry. And I'm going to bring a little white there. We are going to outline his eyes. And I think I'll do my outline before I do anything to my black. So my outline is neutral gray. Outline the eye. I'm going to outline the blue. This side, the white, is tucked over here behind the pupil and our wattle. We talked about highlighting our wattle. I'm going to take the country red, and you probably guessed it, a little of the light mocha. Scuff that off on my towel. Kind of makes a really nice tomatoey kind of red. So I come in here and I'm going to dry brush a highlight on my wattle And again, I'll take that same mix that I've used in my liner, and I'll add our swipe of highlight with our comma. I think you could take a little swipe here as well. There we go. I think up top can take it a little bit brighter, so I'm going to add a little more light mocha just to brighten up on the wattle up top. There we go. He's getting ready for his crazy little pupils. So I'm going to take my 1/8 lunar blender. I've got white on it. My eyes are dried now, and I'm just going to scratch. I'm hopping over my liner. There. A highlight. And I'm going to pop on a little more white in the center of it. So this one's appearing to be a circle. This is a scratched in from the edge, but it's going to go right across onto the white and onto the blue. So there's our highlight. I might pop this up a bit more. There, yeah, I like that. It's rounding his little eye a bit more. And I'll probably play with my highlight a bit, outline, pardon me. I did the little fine bits of black, but I'm gonna put a little neutral gray with that black. That's better. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, so now we've got our crazy looking fellow, and we're going to apply the funky hair coming away from him. So I'm going to take my milk chocolate. You know how we add those little fine hair off of all of our beard pieces, and we come in here and wisp those in. Well, off of his head, he's going to have a little more like the tail. You know, he's a little bit, we'll call it Christmas wired out. So he's gonna have these crazy whacked out hair coming from his head, just off the face part. We're not going crazy off of his beard at all. So I'm picking up a little burnt umber, and I'm going to come in with a few darker ones. We need to make sure that we've got, and I'm using a dirty brush, so the burnt umber is going to be more of a darkened, let's call it darkened milk chocolate. So I'll just have these crazy, and they're gonna make them look a little funky and crazy. So remember, we did light mocha as well, dirty brush. So I'm gonna bring in some, and don't forget his glasses are gonna come on top of this. So these are gonna be background, if you can believe it. There, we've got him looking look more funkier than I wanted, so I think I'm going to take some of that off. Now you can load your brush with blending gel to make a softer float. A lot of people have a hard time with a soft float. I'm going to come in with raw umber, and this is going to pop everything out. So you see how the raw umber, but we don't want it to look like a trim, and that's where we're talking about a softer float. I'll come in around his eyes. And I'm just going to strengthen a little more behind his beak. There. I'm going to come in. I haven't even added the little hair on his arm yet. I should have my mop out here, but there. And I am going right onto my green. And this is where we talked about earlier that I was going to shade. And it's raw umber we're using for this, but it's going to push our fur back. I'll shade along his feathers, just loosely. And I am going to come after and decide where along the background, behind the bird, like I did here. But you see how a nice soft raw umber on his coat fur. I'll go a little bit along the bottom. Just a little here and there. This is going to kind of tie everything together and take that bold white off. So when I say tie it all together, I don't know if you know, but when you look at your picture, a lot of times the white just seems to jump out. And even my gray shading on my white doesn't bring it all together. So I flip my brush around. I'm going to shade all the way down his socks. Now compare the two socks. See what I'm talking about, how it just kind of pulls everything together. Nice and soft. Shade along the bottom of him. I'm going to shade under the fur on his jacket as well. I'll shade up on his hat. I could be using a little bit bigger brush up there. My 1/2 inch. That would help so I don't have to walk it out as far. Remember, we did already do raw umber on the hat there. I'm just going to snag him off just to soften that edge. And I'll bring some raw umber even right up into the hat. You don't notice it, but you do. It's one of those things that we don't want it to be the standout. We're wanting the raw umber to tie everything together. Nice and soft. This is where I'll show you where I'm going to shade in along the behind. So that's behind the pom-pom and on the bird. I think I might add a few more crazy longer hair, and that was where we took burnt umber and milk chocolate and just added a few funky hair. I added them and then I took a bunch out, but I think I like it with just a few. Yeah. And I can bring a few. That was a bit wider than I want to. There. Have a few of those little crazy guys coming out. I feel they're just going to show his Christmas stress. He's a little bit crazy at this time of year. And remember, on his beard, those little feathers, we have a few coming out just like we did on his arms and on his body. And they can be added at any time. They don't have to, you want to finish off other things. We've got to go to his berries and get his glasses on. But it's one of those things, even though I'm saying it, I'm not stopping. Okay, so we're going to move on to his glasses and his berries. His berries, I want to take, we're going to have black plum is what I want. So I'll have a little black plum. And I'm going to take true red. Change my mind. I'm going to take black plum and crimson red. Yeah. And any kind of berry stick you have. I have the old berry sticks at the shop, but I'm here at home. So I'm going to take, this is a thing I don't even know where I got it. Could even be a makeup piece. I'm not sure. So, but they work as a berry stick. So I double load it, picking up my black plum, and I'm going to dab in, so that's my crimson red and my black plum. Now I'll have to dry it a couple of times and repeat. So I'll do that. Once I've got my berries on, my color I want them to be, or the strength I want them to be, they're the same color. That's the crimson. And then I'm going to take, and I'm going to add a fiery red, plump commas on them to highlight them. Now while those are drying, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shade raw umber also on my candy cane. I'll just slide that candy cane into the picture. So I'll shade, walking it down, a bit too much water in there. And then I'll turn around. I need a bit more raw umber on here. Pardon me. I'll shade all the way along the outer edge of my candy cane. Now I can't, well, my brush is pretty good. So you see I've shaded all along there. I'm going to shade all along the edges on there as well. I still have this other stocking to do. So everything gets pulled together. And I have the whiskery hair to pull on the arms and to pull on my beard. I'll add a few more, I think, on the bottom too. I want to keep the bottom shorter, but I still think I'll add a few crazy guys down there as well. But now it's just left up to his glasses. They're coming next. For his eye glasses, I'm going to take neutral gray. And I'm going to dry brush a little on the rims of his glasses. Now I'm using my 1/8 lunar blender and I'm kind of hopping around. Then I'm going to get into white, dirty brush. And my white has blue in it. Surprise, surprise. Scuff a bit off. And I'm leaving more paint on this time. Do you see the scratchy highlights? We're going to put a little with the liner as well. But we just want to get a real funky highlight on the glass frames. Still needing to see black. I might have to go back and blacken a bit more around my edge there. And then I want to take white in the liner. And I'm just going to drag that white highlight in the brightest areas that I have this. There. I might put a little more here just because of the pupil on the eye. Just to distinguish my frame. There. There's his funky glasses. And like I say, I think I'm going to come back and I'm going to add a bit more black along here on the outer part of my frame. I dry brushed a little too close to my edge, especially where it's against the white there. So there are his glasses. And go fatten up that cross piece. It's a bit more black there. And that looks pretty good. I've gone ahead and made his crazy feathers poking out all over the place. Beard, added them onto the hands to make them lighter at the tips. I might make this one a bit lighter at the tips. And then we've got the snow at the bottom. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take white and my deerfoot, and I'm just going to tap in a little snow. I've got the brush turned on its side. I just want to make it a little fluffy, that he's standing in fluffy snow, but I'm not trying to overdo it. So that seems pretty good to me. I think all in all, he's looking pretty good. I think the only thing I'm seeing is that the red on the berry highlight isn't popping enough. So I'm gonna take a little light mocha and a little true red just with my liner. And I'm just gonna pop a little highlight up on that berry. See how that just brought the berry all in there nicely? So that worked good. All right, so this is the end of our Christmas rooster.